Hi, Jessica Nadav bringing you this week's Devar Torah for the Festival of Shavuot. And I've called this Devar Torah, What's Grain Got to Do with It? And we'll see why. So we're coming up to the Festival of Shavuot, which starts on Thursday night and it carries on Friday and Shabbat. It's famous for being the time in which we commemorate the giving of the Torah, what we call Zeman Matan Toraten, the time of the giving of the Torah at Sinai. And for anyone who's been following my videos and been listening to the last few weeks, we've been discussing how we spend the time between Pesach and Shavuot, preparing ourselves for this hugely momentous occasion as a nation. Now, in the Torah, Shavuot has several names. In Parashat Mishpatim in the book of Shemot, it's called Chag HaKatzir, the festival of the harvest. In Pinchas, in the book of Bamidbar, it's called Yom HaBikurim, the festival of the first fruits. The same verse, as well as in the parashiot of Kitisa and Re'eh, also mentions the name by which we know it today, which is Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks. Shavuot literally means weeks, and it's not descriptive of the character or the substance of the holiday itself, of the festival. Rather, it's a chronological tag that addresses itself to the lapse of time, the time lapse between Pesach, which itself is known as Chag HaAviv, another agricultural holiday, linked to the spring harvest season, and Shavuot. So there's a link between Pesach and Shavuot, and the name Shavuot emphasizes the relationship between the two and the interdependence between the two festivals. The grain harvest lasted 7 weeks and was a season of great happiness. It began with the harvesting of the barley on Pesach, and the Omer offering, which was the bringing of the sheaf of barley, the earliest of the new crops, to the Mikdash, to the sanctuary, and this marked the beginning of the harvest season. The grain ripened 50 days later, and thus the beginning of the wheat harvest was marked on Shavuot with the bringing of the Lechem Tenufa, which is the wave loaves of bread, and the Bikurim, and the offering of the first fruits. And this concluded the celebration of the grain harvest, which had begun on the second day of Pesach. In other words, it starts on the second day of Pesach and it finishes with Shavuot. But nowhere in the Torah is this festival called Zeman Matan Toratenu, the time of giving the Torah. And this is our entire focus today. If you ask anybody today what happens on Shavuot, it's the festival of the giving of the Torah. And although there's evidence that people were already connecting Shavuot to Zeman Matan Toratenu by then, not even the Mishnah connects Shavuot with this time, with the giving of the Torah. In fact, when our sages mention Shavuot, they use the term Atzeret, which is even more curious because we associated the name Atzeret with Shemini Atzeret, which is the final days, or we call them the tag-on days, to Sukkot. And indeed, it suggests that Pesach to Shavuot is one long festival with 49 days of Chol HaMoed. Right, like we would have had like we do in Sukkot, we have Chol HaMoed, and we have Chol HaMoed in Pesach. So what we're saying is Pesach to Shavuot is one long festival with the Omer, which is the 49 days in between that we're counting and improving ourselves, being the Chol HaMoed of this festival. And Shavuot forms the Atzeret, the tag-on days, so to speak, the final days of the Chag. And in fact, I'm told that various families in Gibraltar, which is where I'm from, have a custom of saying Hamotzi on the first night of Shavuot, on matzah shmura, in keeping with this opinion that it actually forms part of Pesach. And we can therefore see that this whole festival is one long holiday from Pesach to Shavuot, with the Omer in between. And in fact, it's an agricultural one. So what has grain or harvest got to do with Zeman Matan Toratenu, with the giving of the Torah, which is our focus in this day and age, right? We now focus on the giving of the Torah. What's the connection between agriculture or harvest and us receiving the Torah? What are we to learn from this? There must be a connection, right? Everything is connected. So I'm going to suggest that it's not only because we no longer live in an agrarian society, so it's not like we had to change the name to make it relatable, right? Because that would also make sense. Okay, we no longer live in an agrarian society, so now we have to make it relatable to this day and age, and we'll call it something else. I want to suggest that there's a much deeper meaning than that, which is absolutely critical to us being ready to receive the Torah in the first place. Without this, we can't receive the Torah in the first place. So, as we know, that each Yom Tov, each festival, has a Megillah associated with it. The Megillah for Pesach is Shir HaShirim. It's the ultimate love poem, and it symbolizes the falling in love between Hashem, between God and his people. The Megillah of Ruth, which is read on Shavuot, brings the idea of a much deeper love. And we're going to, we often view Matan Torah, the giving of the Torah, as a collective conversion of the whole of the Jewish nation, of Bnei Israel, as the Israelites. And we're told how in the Torah they washed and they prepared themselves like a convert would do before they convert, and how they accepted the word, they accepted the Torah with the words Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. Again, in the same way as a convert would do, that they would accept the words of the Torah. Now, Ruth, as we know, is the ultimate convert. She famously said, Amecha mi v'Elohai Elohai, your people are my people, your God is my God. Now, we say those words, but how many of us notice that what she puts first are the people? She seems to realize inherently that before she can accept God, she needs to deal with his people. And we're not always the easiest people, let's be fair. She realizes that inherently. But if we look at the whole of the Megillah, the whole story as a whole, which takes place against a backdrop of an agricultural setting, and that's very interesting in and of itself, we see that it highlights a fundamental mitzvah. What mitzvah is that? Tzedakah and chesed. Charity and loving kindness. The entire story revolves around kindness from Naomi to Ruth, from Ruth to Naomi, from Naomi to Boaz, and Boaz to both of them. It's kindness all round. And this is fundamentally appropriate for the grandmother of Mashiach. Ruth is the grandmother of Mashiach. It's completely appropriate that it would be based around loving kindness. And it's the key text that connects all the themes of Shavuot. So why the emphasis on agriculture? Why is that so important here on this particular day, on this particular festival? So the Torah's model of tzedakah, of social justice and support, includes a variety of agricultural gifts. So for example, in the Torah it's mandated that grain and produce that were left forgotten during the harvest were available for the poor to glean. The corners of the field, called pe'ah, were designated for the poor. In addition, when we think of bikurim, the first fruits, we also think of the masrot, the tithes that go to the Levites, or to the poor, or that were taken to Yerushalayim to be eaten and consumed. And by the way, if there was too much to be eaten by the individual and his family, it had to be distributed freely for one and all in Yerushalayim to enjoy. So as we've been saying the last few weeks, the period between Pesach and Shavuot, with this Chol HaMoed of the Omer, is about improving ourselves. It's about improving our relationships between our fellow human beings and improving our own character traits, building ourselves into the best kind of human being we can be. And we start with the basic principles of tzedakah, of charity, of loving kindness, of literally being able, of ensuring that the less fortunate amongst us can feed themselves. On Pesach, at a time when we have not yet had time to work on ourselves, we've just become a nation, we are fledgling Jews, so to speak, and still learning the ropes, in inverted commas, of how to behave as a Jew. We bring the barley, we bring the lesser grain. We don't quite know what to do yet. We bring the lesser grain. As we work on our character traits during the Omer, and we become a Goy Kadosh, a holy nation, ready to receive the Torah at Sinai, our offering on Shavuot has been upgraded to bread and fully formed fruit. In the same way as bread is wheat that has had work put into it, so too at Shavuot, we are Jews that have had work put into ourselves during the Omer. So what's grain got to do with it? Everything. It teaches us that we need to put work into ourselves, and the priorities that we need to have between the commandments between man and his fellow human being. Mitzvot ben adam lechavero. I've been talking about this a lot in the last few weeks. Mitzvot ben adam lechavero, between man and man. Now, I mentioned earlier the fact that we said Na'aseh v'nishma. We said we will do and we will hear when we accepted the Torah. And we all associate these words with the acceptance of the Torah at the time. But these words are not spoken at the time of the giving of the Torah. They were spoken in Parashat Mishpatim, which is the next portion of the Torah. What does Parashat Mishpatim talk about? Civil law. Laws, ben adam lechavero, laws between man and man. And please, I beg you, go and listen to my video on that parasha. It's really, really important. Listen to my video on Parashat Mishpatim. It's very relevant, very, very important and crucial to how we live. We're supposed to be living as Jews. The commandments being ben adam lechavero, being between man and man, are crucial. They're crucial to our living as Jewish people, and they precede even the 10 Commandments. Without us fulfilling the mitzvot ben adam lechavero, without us fulfilling the commandments between man and his fellow human being, as a prerequisite, not as by the way, as a prerequisite. If we don't fulfill that correctly, there is no relationship with God at all. No relationship with God. And do you know who understood this very well? Ruth. As I mentioned earlier, she said, Amech ami Elohayich ve'Elohayich Elohai. Your people are my people and your God is my God. Only when your people are my people can your God be my God. And that's the message for us all. Before we can be the people of God, we must be people of our own people. Chag Sameach.